got lucky. The directors almost got into it.
Check 1, 2.
Hey, Chuck.
Hey, Bruce, how's it going?
But if I could actually walk straight.
One, two, three. Or check 1, 2. Check, check. On the Zoom conference, anybody on the Zoom conference that can jump in and say something?
Good. How about yourself?
Oh,
Yeah.
Our co-hosts.
Shu
are you
or
guys
Chris,
there?
can you please say something?
Yeah, this is Shu. Can you guys hear me? Test?
Yeah, we hear you fine. Just for guys, remember the ones that are co-hosts, don't hit mute all. If you hit mute all, you turn the chamber off.
Got it. Thank you.
I was hoping, I know we spend a lot of time with this group, but I was thinking we do our training.
it to the desktop.
Because I turned the TV down.
Line is ready to go.
Yep, good here.
Um, Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to the September 15th, 2020 City Planning Commission. As we get started, there are a couple of announcements I'd like to make. First, thank you for your patience during these unprecedented times as we navigate through this pandemic. We want to make sure we provide the best venue and opportunity to address land use improvements and changes for the constituents of Kansas City, Missouri. Currently, our meetings are hybrid, where we hold the meetings in person here at City Hall, as well as have the opportunity to meet with us virtually. This has worked well, but it has some limitations, and we believe we need to move back to all virtual meetings beginning with the October 6th meeting. And we'll use this platform until the pandemic emergency order ends. To help with those meetings, we've talked about this the last couple of City Planning Commission meetings, and that's the implementation of time limits for the cases we hear. We expect about a 5-minute presentation from staff, 20 minutes for applicants, 2 minutes for individual members from the public, or 5 minutes from those representing a larger group, HOA, or community. This has been discussed again at the last 2 meetings and certainly will be implemented at our next meeting. If anyone has any comments about these time limits or any concerns with that, please let Mr. Rexwinkle know. Right now, there is a call for artists for the Maple Woods Parkway improvements. If you want more information on that, there is a virtual call scheduled for September 30th, 1 to 3, for more information on that. Does it also have a call, or is that?
Not yet.
Not yet,
Soon,
okay.
though.
So 2 weeks?
Soon.
Okay,
No-
so in a couple, soon, I guess there'll be another call for artists for the Kansas City International Airport artwork out there. Last, just want to make sure everybody knows that we are updating the comprehensive plan. The plan is called the KC Spirit Playbook. I invite you to take a look at that and access through the city's website that they've set up for this. The website is playbook.kcmo.gov. It's a good plan, and it's something that we'll be working on for the next 18 months or so. So check it regularly because information's updated there frequently. So with that, I think we're ready to go ahead and begin the meeting. Joe?
Very good. So we'll start with seems like there's an echo. All of a sudden. Okay, we'll start with the consent docket. And we have docket items C1 and C4 and C5 that are all proposed to be continued. Do you want me to call those first?
Yes, please.
Hey, Joe, I think you need to mute your Zoom button. That should help.
Volume.
Very good. Thank you, Ashley. You're right. That was unmuted.
Okay.
All right. C1 is case number final plat 2020-00024, the final plat for 801 Cleveland Avenue. CPC 2020-00127, a project plan for Summerbrook. And C5 is case number CPC 2020-00130, a request to approve a project plan for the village at Green Hills. Staff is recommending all 3 of these cases be continued to, as stated on the docket, without fee.
Okay, so we've got C1, C4, and C5 to be continued. Any discussion from the commission on those 3 cases? Take a motion for continuance.
C1, C4, and C5 to the dates listed on the docket.
Okay, we've got a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Lisa, do you mind taking roll call, please?
Commissioner Allender,
Aye.
Baker,
Aye.
Beasley,
Aye.
Crow,
Aye.
Enders,
Aye.
Hill,
Aye.
Rojas,
Are muted right now, so if you don't mind taking yourself off mute.
Aye.
and Sadowski.
Aye.
Okay, so motion passes 8-0 to continue those 3 cases.
All right, the remaining consent items are all for recommending approval with conditions.
There's an adjustment we need to make to C6.
Okay.
So let's hold C6 for that, and then we'll do C2, C3, which starting with C2 is a final plat or a project plan for the second plat of Benson Place Landing. And C3 is a final plat for Lot 1 of Boardwalk Square. And on these 2, staff recommends approval with conditions provided in the report.
Okay. Joe, I noticed on C3, you probably need to update the signatures on the plat map. Just the signature block needs to be updated. Looks like it's a fairly older version.
Okay.
Looking for approval on docket items C2 and C3. Any discussion from the commission? Motion.
Approve C2 without conditions and C3 with conditions.
Okay, we've got a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Lisa, do you mind taking roll call, please?
Commissioner Allender,
Aye.
Baker,
Aye.
Beasley,
Aye.
Crow,
Aye.
Enders,
Aye.
Hill,
Aye.
Rojas,
Aye.
and Sadowski.
Aye.
Okay, looks like those 2 cases are approved. That's docket item C2 and C3 have been approved 8-0. C6.
Okay, docket item C6 is a project plan for 9301 North Green Hills Road. The staff planner is Olafur Agbaji, and I believe he's got some changes he'd like to recommend.
Thank you, Joe. Mr. Chairman, would like to make an adjustment to condition number 12. And condition number 12 currently states that the developer must dedicate additional right-of-way for North Green Hills Road as required by the major street plan so as to provide a minimum of 56 feet. Would like to change that from 56 to 40 feet. And they worked with Stacy to get that adjustment.
Looks like just changing docket item or the condition number 12 from 56 to 40 feet. Any questions from the commission on that?
I don't have a question on that, but I had another question about this project. One of the stipulations, I think it's condition 1G, talked about an increased percentage of bricks or stone on the front of each building. I noticed that the front elevations seem to be identical throughout the complex. And so it would be great if they increase the percentage, but also just make some variation in where stone is versus siding, and they could work with staff on how to do that. But I just wanted to encourage them to do more variation, not just the increase in stone.
States that the developer continued to work with staff regarding the revised architecture and landscaping. So we are creating a landscape buffer and then also working with the architecture. And we've received rendering that we are reviewing now that we have to get back to him, but we'll keep working with that to see we get as much as we can.
Number 56 to 40.
I can have Stacy answer that. Stacy Lowe.
Initially, when this project went through Planning Commission a few months ago, there was a condition set for it to be 56 feet of right of way based on the information we had at the time from the Public Works Department on what they intended the typical section of that portion of Green Hills Road to be. Since that commission hearing, they have started a preliminary corridor study and have finalized what they think the roadway section will be in that portion of roadway. And they've confirmed that they will only need 40 feet of right of way instead of the 56 feet that we previously requested. So Public Works project manager for that project is in agreement with this condition and has helped me to resolve it and make sure we don't compromise their design in this adjustment.
Right, thank you.
On this case. They've seen this change in the conditions and they're okay with those?
Yep.
Okay, very good. All right, so if there aren't any other questions, I'll take a motion for the approval of docket item C6.
Approve docket item C6 with conditions and changing condition 12 from 56 feet to 40 feet.
Second.
Lisa, do you mind taking a roll call, please?
Commissioner Allender, Baker,
Aye.
Beasley,
Aye.
Prowl,
Aye.
Enders,
Aye.
Hill,
Aye.
Rojas,
Aye.
and Sadowski.
Aye.
Project C6 has been approved. So it looks like let's take a look at all the cases that are going to be continued.
Four, which is case number SUP 2020-00024 at 13423 Charlotte Street. Staff is recommending continuance October 6. Docket item 5, case number SUP 2020-00031 at 2211 Charlotte Street. Staff is recommending continuance October 6. Docket item 6, case number CPC 2020-00095 Forest Reserve preliminary plat. Staff is recommending continuance to October 6th, or I'm sorry, October 20th. Case number CPC 2020-00074 I-49 Industrial Center Development Plan. Staff is recommending continuance to October 6th. Docket item 8, which is 3 companion cases at 8400 Winter Road and 456 Wallace Avenue. These are abutting properties right next to each other, so same project. Staff is recommending continuance to October 6th. Number 2020-00006, which is a text amendment related to signage in the downtown loop. Staff is recommending continuance to October 20th. 11, 2 companion cases, 2613 Benton Boulevard, case number CPC 2020-00126 and CPC 2020-00100. Staff is recommending continuance of these cases to October 6th. Looks like on docket item 11.2, it says, no, it does say October 6th. Okay, good. And then docket item 14, case number CPC 2020-00132 for Fairway. Staff is recommending continuance to October 6th. Hillcrest Office Park, staff is recommending continuance of this one until October 6th. Case number CPC 2020-00135, which is a text amendment for periodic review updates. Staff is recommending continuance October 20th. 17, which consists of 2 companion cases, 3408 Charlotte and 3704 Central, both for our rezoning request, and staff is recommending continuance to October 6th. And then docket item 18, 19, and 20 are all the same applicant as is the same with 17. For case number SUP 2020-00014 3112 Charlotte, continuance to October 6. 19, case number SUP 2020-00015 3120 Campbell, continuance October 6. And finally, docket item 20, case number SUP 2020-00018 3401 Campbell, continuance to October 6.
On docket item number 6 or 7, just to confirm if that's October 6th or October 20th, because I thought I saw an email that came out that switched it from the 6th to the 20th for the continuance.
That was docket number 6.
Docket item 6, I thought 7 was the same as well. Maybe I'm
Just 6. 6 changed to October 20th.
Is
okay.
proposed to be, the docket says October 6th continuance, but it really should be October 20th.
Okay.
I believe everything else is stated correctly in the docket.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So we've got a recommendation to continue several cases, docket item 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, with its companion cases, 9, 11, with its companion cases, 14, 15, 16, 17, with its 2 cases, 18, 19, and 20. Is that right?
That's correct.
Comments from the commission on the continuance of these cases? Comments from the public about continuing any of these docket items listed?
If anyone on Zoom has any testimony, please use the raised hand feature.
I'll take a motion on the continuance of these cases, please.
A motion to continue docket items 4, 5, 7 to 8.3, 9, 11.1, 11.2, 14, 15, 16, 17.1, 17.2, 18, 19, and 20 to the date listed on the docket, and and move to continue docket item 6 to October 20th.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Lisa, do you mind taking a roll call, please?
Commissioner Allender,
Aye.
Baker,
Aye.
Beasley,
Aye.
Crowell,
Aye.
Enders,
Aye.
Hill,
Aye.
Rojas,
Aye.
and Sadowski.
Aye.
Okay, so it's been approved 8-0, continuance of the cases listed to the meeting dates of which are suggested in the agenda. Okay, with that, I think we're ready to move on to an actual case today. Docket item 1. As soon as Joe comes back, we'll get that introduced into the record, or can you do that up for us, Olafu?
I can try to do it. But 1, this is case number CLD, final plat 2020-0024. Final plat located at 801 Cleveland Avenue. It's a request for approval of a final plat for 2 lots on about 3 acres located at 801 and 807 Cleveland Avenue. And Chris Huey is the staff planner.
LFU, wrong case. That's consent docket.
Oh, sorry. All right, Joey's back, so he can take it over.
Tough job.
Oh, the first one is Zach, my bad. I was reading the consent.
Oh, the first one's docket item. We're back to docket item 1 then. There's 2 companion cases, starting with 1.1, case number CPC 2020-00101. A request to amend the SWOPE area plan, change the recommended land use from commercial to urban redevelopment on about 16 acres, generally bound by Swope Parkway to the north and 49th Street to the south, Chestnut Avenue to the west and College Avenue to the east. Docket item 1.2, case number CPC 2020-00073. The request to rezone approximately 16 acres from District B1, B2-2, and R1-1.5 to District UR, which also serves as a preliminary plat to allow for multiple uses, including office and residential uses at the same location.
Good morning. This is Zach Nelson of City Planning and Development. Can everybody hear me?
One second, please. It looks like we've got a required quorum on this docket item. So just making sure that we have the right folks on here, and we've got this case off.
Okay. Joe, could you allow me to share my screen, please? Thank you. Just a moment. So these next 2 cases are companion cases. As Joe mentioned, the first one is a request for an area plan amendment to the SWOPE area plan. The second is a request to rezone to UR from several zoning districts, which will also serve as a preliminary plat and a development plan. This is known as the offices at Overlook. So this project is located in South KC near Brush Creek. A little more specifically, this is located on the south side of Swope Parkway, in between Chestnut Avenue to the west, College Avenue to the east, and 49th Street to the south. And there are several uses and buildings that currently exist on the site. It's a fairly large site with some single-family residential to the south on the west side of Agnes, and then some apartments to the south on the east side of Agnes. So this is looking south at the site. Just to give a little more context of the surrounding uses, there's a church, a fraternal organization, and then some retail on what would be the east side of the site. Again, as I mentioned, some apartments to the south, and then single-family residential further to the south. So the applicant is requesting rezoning to UR, which, as I mentioned, will serve as a preliminary plat and a development plan. And this allows for more flexibility on the site and is also required anytime an applicant is requesting tax incentives. And in this case, the applicant is requesting PIA tax incentives and just went through the PIA process last week. So I'll zoom in a little further in just a moment to show the specific buildings on the site, but generally, the site plan shows a connection for private drives that extend all the way from the west side of the site, connect to a curb cut on Swope Parkway in this area. And then there's a secondary connection a little further to the south. So this is the west half of the site in between Chestnut and Agnes. So the applicant is proposing a 3-story office building on the corner here, which be kind of the most visible building on the site when you're heading east on Swope Parkway. And then another 3-story office building just to the east of that as well. There will be a private drive here with parking for tenants and residents. And then there will be an L-shaped multifamily building just to the south here. This will be building 2. The first 2 levels will provide parking, and then there will be 4 stories above with 80 residential units. And then just to the east of that is a multi-purpose building, which will be the smallest building on the site. It will be primarily used as a meeting and training space for the office tenants, and then also for community events. And then this is the east side of the site. So this is Agnes. So this side of the site shows another office building fronting on the Swope Parkway, 3 stories as well. Then a mixed-use building just to the east of that. And then finally, a mixed-use and multifamily building on the easternmost portion of the site with a trail to the south. And then the site plan also shows a playground in this general area. As you can see, a lot of landscaping throughout the site as well. So in terms of landscaping overall, the site is very well landscaped. It has a lot of street trees that comply, and they do comply with the street tree planting requirement. And then there's also a lot of interior landscaping as well, as you can see. That also complies with the interior landscaping requirements. And then this is the east side of the site, kind of same thing, street trees, and then a lot of screening using shrubs for vehicular parking areas as well. So overall, really good job of landscaping. In terms of the building elevations, I'm not going to go through all of them, but I will show you that one on the northwest corner of the site. Again, this is a 3-story office building. It'll have panels and a large amount of glass with a lot of transparency on the ground floor especially. And I forgot to mention that Swope Parkway is an established parkway, which means that it's subject to the Boulevard Parkway standards. So this whole site is subject to those standards. So just kind of the elevations for that one building. And then in terms of phasing, the developer has stated that they intend to begin kind of on the northwest corner here. Phase 1 will be that building that I just showed you, that office building. And it'll also extend and provide this connection east and connect into Swope Parkway here. Phase 2 will be that office building just to the east of that first building. Phase 3 will be the residential L-shaped building. Then phase 4 will be that mixed-use small building. And then phase 5 will complete that western half of the site. And then the kind of the second half of the phasing, if you will be the remaining buildings on the site, moving west to east. And then this is just a general rendering of what the site will look like overall. It kind of shows generally what you can kind of expect moving down Swope Parkway. Staff believes that this is really an improvement from what's currently existing. The site has been declared blighted by the PIEA board. So staff is supportive of this overall. I did want to mention a few things. I believe the nearest major streets moving north-south are Prospect to the west and Benton Boulevard, I believe, to the east. That's about a mile distance in between. So as it currently exists, it's kind of difficult for pedestrians to cross Swope Parkway to get across either way. So staff would like to see some sort of a cooperative agreement between the developer, the Parks Department, Public Works, and KCATA to assign the cost share and responsibility for installation of a traffic signal on Swope to allow for easier pedestrian crossing. And then staff would also like to see the applicant share in some of the cost and installation of the trail to the north of Swope Parkway as well. So again, overall, staff is supportive of this project and recommends approval of the area plan amendment without conditions, and recommends approval of the rezoning to UR subject to the 24 conditions in the staff report. That concludes my presentation, and I can answer any questions that you might have.
Commission, to the staff.
Maryland, have those agreements been put into place on the cost share? I just missed.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Have the agreements been put in to place for the cost share with the parks, with the developer?
To the best of my knowledge, I don't believe they have been finalized yet. I'm not sure if Justin Peterson is on. You might be able to confirm. I'm not sure.
Question.
I have a question. I'm curious as to if there was a traffic study on the appropriate place to put a crossing and or a stoplight. I've traveled that, and I can think of one on by Bruce R. Watkins, and then as you come up, it's pretty straight away, but that traffic can back up right there. So I'm wondering, and maybe it's just with the construction that has been happening there, but I know that there's plenty of traffic that's coming from 350 that use that kind of bridge all the way through to hit 71 to go downtown. So I'm just wondering about what the impact of that would be by putting a stoplight right there in the middle with less than a mile for the next stoplight.
Well, I do know that a traffic study was submitted, and I think that it was recommended that the pedestrian crossing would be near Agnes Avenue, so kind of in the center of the site. Not sure if Jeff Bryan is on.
He's here, Zach. He can help.
Yeah, this is Jeff Bryan with Public Works, and as Zach mentioned, a traffic impact study was completed. And so the traffic study looked at a traffic signal at Agnes Avenue, and so that's what's proposed. As you see in the conditions, is for the applicant to make a payment toward, or the developer to make payment toward the signal at that location. The good thing about Agnes is that it's more or less equidistant from the existing signal at, I believe, at Benton, and the existing signal at Prospect. So that's where another benefit of the signal at that location is to space out the traffic signals. So I'm not sure if that answers your question or not.
I have to get oriented. Yes, it does in terms of the traffic study, but I'm also wondering if Agnes is that where will there be a dedicated turn lane? Because I know they already have these kind of intersection pathways where cars are in the middle waiting to try to, turn left or turn right to get across. So I'm wondering, is there going to be a separate turn lane put in, or how will they mitigate for that, Agnes?
Yeah, let me double check that. I was thinking there is, but let's see.
I believe what Zach is recommending is conditions that would require the parties to enter into it. I don't believe that has occurred yet. I'm quite confident it hasn't.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Can I just ask a process question? So if we approve it, does that, if they have trouble entering in that cost share, does it come back to us? The project looks good, for me. I just am curious about if there's going to be a dedicated turn, if it's at one of those intersections, because if not, you can back up traffic waiting for a car that's waiting for the other lanes to pass. So I'm sure a traffic study probably addressed that.
If you recommend a condition requiring the parties to enter into it and the council upholds that or approves that condition in the ordinance, then it would have to come back to at least the council. I'm not totally sure. Sarah, do you know if would that probably need to come back to CPC too to get rid of that condition? Do it. If for some reason they didn't want to, they'd have to get rid of the condition.
Yeah, I think it could probably go to council to
Okay.
change a condition like that, since it's a cost share. It's essentially a contract term. We're on the topic, one of the conditions has a recommended amount, but the one for the trail, which I think is number 3, doesn't. So I don't know if you want to, I don't know if Parks has an amount in mind. We might want to add that if they do.
Please jump in and clarify for Sarah if there's an amount known for the trail.
This is Justin Peterson with the Parks Department. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
There's no defined amount on this, and I think I had missed a question directed towards me earlier about an agreement. That agreement hasn't been agreed. Nothing's been agreed upon yet. We haven't seen anything in terms of that.
Mr. Chair, this is Forrest Sting. I am looking at the date the quorum was established, and that should have been a date that I was in attendance, but I'm not listed. So can we confirm that? Because I have a couple questions. And if I understand this right, if I'm not listed, I'm not really supposed to speak on the case. Is that correct?
Lisa or Nicole, please.
Yeah, I just checked it and it was not heard on that date. That was a typo on the docket. So there is no quorum. So yes, you can speak. It's been continued a couple times, but no testimony has been heard on it, on either one of these cases.
Okay, thank you. So if I might, I'd like to clarify Commissioner Hill's question regarding the traffic way and the traffic study, because I hear her talking about a turn lane, but if I also heard correctly, the condition was dealing with a pedestrian crosswalk. So am I not hearing correctly? Are we looking at a turn lane where they would be able to turn, if they're going west, to be able to get in a turn lane to turn over into that project, in addition to having the pedestrians' ability to cross over that traffic way?
Trying again with Public Works, and no, the traffic study, does not show a westbound left turn lane at Agnes. It's showing a shared through left for that inner lane.
Commissioner Hill, can you clarify, is that what you were asking about, was having a turn lane in addition to the pedestrian crossing?
Yes, I thought I heard them recommend a stoplight for the pedestrian crossing.
Ultimately, there will be, so I believe condition, let's see, I think 22 was having payment toward that. Let's see.
That's correct. 22 has a payment amount. 23 talks about constructing a northbound right turn lane on Agnes Avenue at Swope Parkway.
You said a north turn lane? Say that, read that one again for me.
The developer shall construct a northbound right turn lane on Agnes Avenue at Swope Parkway.
But we're talking about east-west.
The required turn lane for the east-west direction on Swope, based on the traffic study. With the existing 3 lanes, with the westbound, it would be the inner lane for the left turns, and then for the eastbound, then the outer lane would be available for the right turns without a designated, single left turn lane or right turn lane for those movements.
Give my clarification is Commissioner Hill asking if there will be a dedicated left turn lane for that westbound traffic?
No, there will not be. Based on the traffic study, it's shown that the through left is all that is required.
Commission?
I had a quick question about parking. It said in the report that they decided to do their own parking standard and that staff thought it was sufficient. What is that compared to the normal standard?
Just a moment. So a total of 507 parking spaces are proposed. And I do know that for the residential portion, a minimum of 1 parking space is required per code. And so there are a total of 155 residential units proposed. And then I don't remember off the top of my head what the code requires for office uses. Joe, maybe if you could look that up.
I can look it up.
Because I believe if it's the same applicant that essentially did another project where they shared, right? Essentially shifts, right, between commercial and residential. So residential comes in at 5 and then leaves at 8 a.m. and then fills in with commercial. So I'm gathering it's going to be less than what we generally require.
Yeah. That's probably something we can ask the applicant once we get them introduced in the case.
Cool.
Does that work? Or staff? Go ahead and introduce the applicant.
Hey, Kobe, I have one more question just as
Okay.
clarifying. So for the elevations that you showed, I'm trying to understand, like going back to this idea of what we evaluate at this point. Do you want us to evaluate these elevations, or is that getting too into the weeds with the UR plan?
Well, I was really just providing those as just for some context of what they'll look like generally. But the applicant, I forgot to mention this and I apologize. They have submitted design guidelines. So they will have to adhere to those design guidelines. But I don't remember specifically off the top of my head what they call for in terms of architecture and building materials. But all of the buildings proposed both now and in the future, whether if it's ever redeveloped or if something's demolished or whatever it may be, they'll have to comply with those design guidelines unless this UR plan is amended in the future.
Okay. That's all I have.
Who's the applicant for this project?
I believe it's Kurt Mencher, and I believe he's online. I saw him just a minute ago. Just a moment.
Yeah, I'm trying to promote them. It's a lot for one person to do.
Okay. Mr. Mitchner, it looks like you have been promoted and you're on mute right now. So once you come off mute, if you don't mind stating your name and address for the record, that'd be great.
Mitcher, 1020 East 8th Street, Kansas City, Missouri.
And Zach Nelson, this is Elizabeth Schultz at Community Builders of Kansas City with Emmett Pearson, and we are 4001 Blue Parkway, the applicant on the project.
Okay. The applicant's team online?
Yes.
Elizabeth, anybody else?
Emmett Pearson is the only other person joining from Community Builders.
Okay. You'd like to give about this case?
So the Overlook District, which is the project before you, as you know, is a UR plan for 11 acres of redevelopment on Swope Parkway. This project has been a project that we've worked closely with for the neighborhoods for several decades. Town Fork Creek, the neighborhood that's directly to the south, as well as Blue Hills to the west, and the Spina, Mount Cleveland, and Sheraton Estates neighborhood have been a part of a steering committee that's really helped us to define development and what's needed in this corridor. As you may or may not be aware, we are the developers of the Swope Health Services, the shops on Blue Parkway, the 4001 office building, and the H&R Block Call Center, which is located just to the east of this project. The Overlook District is a mixed-use development district, and as you can see, we have worked to develop the plan in a series of several phases. We've taken into account shared parking, worked closely with stormwater management on this site, and this is truly a development that takes advantage of many of the sustainable goals for development in this community in the future. If you have any specific questions about the development or the amenities that we're providing, we will be happy to answer those.
And if I could answer one question real quick, there was a previous question about the parking that's provided. I just wanted to circle back to that. So one parking space per residential unit is required. There's 155 residential units proposed. And in addition, the requirement for the office use is one parking space per 1,000 square feet of office square footage. And so there's a total of 195,000 square feet of office space. So this adds up to a total of 350 required parking spaces, and a total of 507 spaces are provided. So about 150 greater than required.
Question for the applicant. Can you just speak a little bit to the 8 different phases?
The phases that are the Class A office are located on the frontage that is along Swope Parkway. Those buildings are going to be about 3 stories in height, and I believe they're indicated on the plan as phase 1, 2, and 6. The intent of the development is to start on the west side of the property and then moving towards the east. That will help us with several things in terms of phasing. We've already lined up PIAC applications and funding for improvements on that western block. That property we have full ownership of. So the phase 1 and the phase 3 is a part of the Zion Grove Baptist Church property, which we acquired about 18 months ago. And then over to the east, the existing Houston Shopping Center, we also have ownership of. So as we look to demolish those buildings and begin redevelopment, there will be pad sites created and the infrastructure will go in. So the intent is to create the pad sites and put in the parking areas at the beginning of this project. So the phases 1 through 8 will come online as the market demands and there's need for the different type of development. So as we fill up the first Class A office building, we'll move to the second and then to the third office building. The residential buildings that are phase 3 and phase 8, we believe connect really well to the existing multifamily and single family neighborhoods that are on the south side in the Town Fork Creek neighborhood. As you heard a few months ago, the Rochester on Blue Parkway, which is a 64 unit multifamily project, which we have in for permit right now, is located about a half mile to the east on our 4001 office building campus. Once that project gets going and underway, we believe that we will move to this phase 3 residential project. So if you can see on the plan, we imagine phase 1 and phase 3 going at the same time, which will start that west to east development. The phase 5 and phase 6 that are indicated on the plan are more focused on the amenities and the trails that will be incorporated on site. So there is a health and wellness trail that does connect between the neighborhood and the parkway, and those trails go between 5 and 6. You can see it's indicated there as having a playground and some event space, and the wellness trail connects as well to the residential properties or lots that are on the phased plan.
About what the plan is for the existing tenants and how will they potentially be incorporated into the new development?
Morning, this is Emmett Pearson, Jr., President, CEO of Community Builders of Kansas City. Currently, the church is vacant with regards to the shopping center there. It's about 4 tenants there. I'm technically in another meeting with one of those tenants as we're getting ready to move them into the grocery store that we acquired June 30th of this year. With regards to the other tenants, they were on month-to-month leases already. So they are looking to move other places. With regards to the, on the far east side of the property, the beauty shop, we are in negotiations or trying to be in negotiations with that particular tenant. We have offered them in writing by certified mail for them to have a spot that we have a beauty shop that is vacant in our shopping center. We have offered them a substantial reduced rate on the rent as well. So with regards to most of the tenants, we are offering them opportunity there. With regards to the Beta Lambda, which is to the east of the old Zion Grove, we're in final negotiations and moving into contract. We have both agreed to the terms of that contract, and they will be moving into our shopping center.
Just out of curiosity, what is going to be the rental rates for the units, the apartment units?
The market will decide that, but it will be mixed income. So if we, based upon the market so that we have for the Rochester, the market rate units will be for a 1-bedroom right at about $980. If we're going to affordable housing and we are looking at a tax credit proposal, it'll be roughly about $600, $650. But those rental rates are still being worked on.
I have a couple questions. So it looked like condition 1 stipulated that they needed to provide pedestrian entry to all of the buildings. And is that something that the applicant is open to doing?
Yes, we have made that note in the design guidelines for the development. I'm not sure if that was made available to you. If not, Zach has it to share. And it does specify that there are pedestrian connections from both Swope Parkway and from the parking lot to the main entrances of all buildings. And if the building does not front on Swope Parkway, it's from the adjacent street. So whether it is Chestnut, College, or Agnes.
Okay. And then I wondered, Elizabeth, if you could speak to the density of the site, you know, why you decided 3 to 4 story buildings versus say maybe consolidating these to higher density. I realize you're doing a UR, so you know you're kind of trying to see what could be approved, but I just wanted to get a sense of, because the proportion of the buildings relative to the scale of Swope Parkway, I feel like this parkway could really serve much higher density, much taller street wall, but I wanted to get your take on how you ended up with the site plan you did.
So the overall density in terms of FAR is about 1 across the entire development. One thing that we struggle with here developing on east of Troost, especially east of Prospect, is the cost burden of doing any sort of structured parking. So in order for us to increase the density on the site site, we would have to go to a structured parking situation in order to meet the demand for parking spaces in a Class A office sort of situation. We worked really hard on developing a site plan that minimized the appearance of surface parking lot behind. And just to give you an idea, when we did a study of adding parking below one of the office buildings, it increased the construction cost of just the structure parking, not even the screening or anything else, by over $2.5 million. And when we translate that to what tenants are able to pay in this market, or those that we want to attract to this market, which are primarily nonprofits, community focused and mission aligned tenants, that is a cost that they're not able to cover in what they are able to afford in a new construction building. So surface parking is really the driver for why the FAR can't go more dense. But we are at an FAR of about 1.
And if I could jump in, I would just tell you that I would love to have structured parking, but we thought from a political standpoint, considering that there are no structured parking currently east of Troost that I'm aware of, other than that at Palestine Baptist Church, which was done probably 20 to 25 years ago, we just thought that would be an uphill battle, that we would probably spend our time doing other things as opposed to trying to convince the city to be a part of structured parking. Again, we would love to have structured parking. It just is not something that is typically done on this side of town. Hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I think so. I know there's a lot of site constraints here. I was just curious if there was a possibility of, taking one of those buildings, sort of stacking them and not necessarily increasing the FAR of the site, at least not anytime soon, but just giving more of a building on that street wall, and maybe eventually the parking becomes less of an issue and you can build more densely, as opposed to kind of spreading it out and covering all of your land. But again, I support the project, just curious kind of where you guys are at in terms of defining the density. So that clarifies things.
And on the elevations, I heard kind of briefly. We're happy to answer those questions as well.
Yeah, I can just comment on that. I think because it's so early in the process, and it seems like your design guidelines specify, a lot of good things around transparency. My concern with the elevations is that they seemed pretty monolithic. That kind of gave me a suburban office park vibe of just having the ribbon windows and not really kind of defining entry points. So maybe as part of that process of doing pedestrian entries off of slope, you can have more of a defined entry and break up the building facade a little bit.
Yeah, we'll definitely take that into consideration. Just so you're aware, this elevation was submitted several months ago as a part of the application. So we have updated renderings, which we'll be able to share, which really show the dynamic facade as well. And Zach, we can pass those through for the next meeting.
Sounds good.
Commission to the applicant. The conditions to the case. You agree with those? You're okay with all the conditions listed?
Yes, we've gone over those conditions and prepared responses to Zach, and we're comfortable with the conditions.
Okay, and there's something I want to check, Zach. Are there any park conditions on here, like parkland dedication or anything like that, that should be a part of the conditions? Because I didn't see anything listed from the Parks Department.
I didn't receive any from the Parks Department.
Potential in this project, so there definitely should be.
Yeah.
So does the trail on the north side of the Slope Parkway qualify for that?
When we had conversations with Parks and Rec on that trail dedication, They said that it would not be appropriate unless we dedicated that trail as a separate tract to ensure that it wasn't going to be developed on in the future. Parks indicated that at the time when we would apply for the permit for the residential projects, so I don't remember those phase number now, but I believe it was 3 and 8 on the plan. That is when they would determine the acreage that would be required for that parkland dedication, since it's based off of the number of residential units.
Usually there's a condition in here that specifies how it's going to be satisfied, the parkland dedication, and it sounds like they want to leave some flexibility in there for that, but there should still be a condition that states something like that. Justin, can you please jump in?
Yeah, this is Justin in the Parks Department. There should be something in there. Granted, I probably put it in there a couple months ago when this project first kind of made its way through, but I can check. But yeah, there definitely should be a condition from us in there.
Look up what he entered in a few months ago and let you guys know.
Okay.
Just give us a few minutes to do that. You can move on to the.
All right, so if there's no more questions for the applicant, what I'd like to do is go ahead and open it up for public testimony. Is anybody in the audience who would like to talk about this case? Seeing none, I'm hoping, or has anybody raised their hand online?
Raise their hand, no.
Another couple seconds just in case. Then we'll go ahead and close public testimony at this time. And maybe it's, if there's something that's supposed to be a condition in there based on parks and this dedication fee, maybe that's something you guys can work on before it goes to council. Just the language of that, or is there something, do you have something available, Justin?
Been able to pull that up yet?
No, not yet, but we could just kind of put a blanket one that says the developer shall comply with the parkland dedication requirements as outlined in section 88408 or something like that. Can I keep it simple?
Allows the developer to pick and working with the Parks Department to whether they pay a fee or they dedicate. So I think that that's fine to do a very generic condition because either option would meet the ordinance.
On page 4 of the staff report, it talks about this very issue.
Itself and the actual construction of the building, but there's still generally there's a parkland dedication fee and how that's paid, whether it's in how it's negotiated out.
Your staff report says that the applicant's request does not conform to the parkland dedication requirements. Can you explain what you mean?
I think at the time when the staff report was finalized, we still had concerns because I believe that not all of the park's conditions were finalized at that time, but I think I can revise that at this
I
point.
think your first suggestion of just of allowing staff to come up with a condition between CPC and council is probably the best.
I think there needs to be something that you guys get it worked out prior to going to council. That's just my recommendation for that.
Yeah,
I agree.
Do you want to add a placeholder condition though that says they have to comply with 88408 to be sure that this doesn't get lost? And you know what I mean? Because
We
that's
can always
ultimately
change it.
what they need to do is comply with 88408, regardless of whether it's a dedication or a payment of a fee.
.2, right? Yeah. Okay.
For the applicant, before we close testimony and just make it before the commissioners? Just making sure, applicant, you understand why we have to add this parkland dedication piece, and so there's still room for negotiation for that before it goes to council.
We're fine with that condition. This is Emmett Pearson.
Thank you. So at this point in time, I guess it's amongst the commission, if there's any comments you'd like to make before we go to a motion. Otherwise, we can go straight to a motion either way.
Docket item 1.1 and docket item 1.2 with conditions as stated, and the addition of a condition that the applicant will have a parkland dedication as stated by 88408.
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none. Lisa, do you mind going through roll call, please?
Commissioner Allender,
Aye.
Baker,
Aye.
Beasley,
Aye.
okay, Crowell, Commissioner Crowell,
Aye.
Enders,
Aye.
Hill,
Aye.
Rojas,
On mute. You can either turn your video on or your microphone. Either one would be great. There you go.
Aye.
All right.
and Commissioner Sadowski.
Aye.
Okay, it looks like the docket items 1.1 and 1.2 have been approved 8-0. Thank you for coming in and good luck with your project.
Thank you very much. Thank you, all commissioners and staff.
What, docket item number 3? That's right.
Request for dismissal.
Yep.
So docket item 2, case number SUP 2020-00019. A request to approve a special use permit to allow the reuse of Stevenson Apple Orchard for an outdoor event space located at 6700 Lee Summit Road. The applicant is requesting dismissal of this case.
Talking on this one, or we're just going ahead with a recommendation to dismiss this case?
Member,
I don't know. Okay. Can the rest of the commission hear us? Can you hear Ashley? Kokithia, can you hear us okay? Okay.
It kind of comes in and out at times, but yeah, for the most part.
All right, so it's been recommended docket item number 2 be dismissed. I don't think there's really any need for a discussion on that. We'll just go straight to a motion. Let's
Move to dismiss docket item number 2.
Second.
to dismiss docket item 2. Lisa, do you mind taking roll call, please?
Commissioner Allender,
Aye.
Baker,
Aye.
Beasley,
Aye.
Crowell,
Aye.
Enders,
Aye.
Hill,
Aye.
Rojas,
Aye.
and Sadowski.
Aye.
Okay, so it's been voted to dismiss docket item number 2.
All right, the next case is docket 3, case number CPC 2020-00050. A request to approve a rezoning without a plan from District R 7.5 to District O for office to allow for the use of a daycare center on about 1 acre located at the southeast corner of Holmes Road and East 92nd Street. Shu Wood is the staff planner.
Good morning, everyone.
Here we
I'll
go.
share my screen here in a second. Let me correct the legal ads first. Initially, the applicant proposed to rezone this from R 7.5 to O district. After communicating with staff, the applicant agreed to propose it to rezone it from R 7.5 to R 80. So this property is for the project called Playful Scholars Childcare. It's located in the south of Kansas City. More specifically, it's located to the southeast corner of East 92nd Street and Holmes Road. It's this property located at the corner here in L shape. And the surrounding land use, including single family uses to the north, east, and on the other side of Holmes Road, that's zone R 7.5. And directly to the south, there is a mix of zoning district that's ranging from B1 to M2. The subject site is fairly large, including these 2 parcels. The applicant has already combined the parcels, and the land area is approximately 3.6 acres. It has an existing structure located on the site, which has been used as a daycare center before. It has 1 driveway access from 92nd Street. The back of the site is largely wooded. Here's the view looking east from East 92nd Street. The subject site is located on your right hand. Again, it has been used as a daycare before, but it was being vacant for a while. And this is looking north from Home Street. The subject site is located on your right-hand side. Here's a site plan provided by the applicant. Again, everything has already been established, including the daycare center and the pavement for the parking. So the applicant is not proposing to construct any addition or any grading will be down on the site. And staff does recommend to rezone an approval without condition to rezone this property from R 7.5 to R 80. The reason is because the applicant proposes to use this site as a daycare center, which will host the maximum of 100 students. And that is not allowed in R 7.5. R 7.5 allows the maximum of 20 students. So R 80 does allow up to 100 to run the business as a daycare center. So staff recommended approval without condition, since this is essentially a downzoning from R 7.5 to R 80. And I'm open to questions.
Questions for staff on this project?
I just had a process question as to why we need to downzone versus doing like a special use permit or something like that.
So daycare centers, we have 3 different levels that we review it. We have a home daycare, usually it's less than 10 kids. And then the second category is like a group daycare, which is from like 10 to 20 kids. And then any number above 20 to 100, and we review it as a daycare center. So when we're looking at daycare center, we consider it as more of a business type rather than, so it's more of a commercial use rather than just a neighborhood service to the residential use.
So this is why in R 7.5, a daycare center is prohibited. It's not even allowed. So this is under the new zoning code. So in R80, the reason we do allow daycare center is because R80 generally provides more land. So in the other hand, it minimizes the impact for the surrounding neighborhood. Does that make sense?
I think so. I guess I'm wondering why we don't just zone it commercial.
We could zone it commercial. The reason we didn't suggest it to rezone it to commercial is because, let me share my screen here real quick. We had a discussion with long range planners. They're the ones making recommendations to rezoning cases usually. The reason we didn't suggest it to rezone it to commercial is because this 92nd Street is not connected to the Truesdale Avenue. And planners do have a concern about the large traffic it might draw. Because once when you rezone it to commercial, let's say one day they decided not to run the daycare, they can run other businesses that's allowed in the commercial district. So because of the road condition and the connection issue, we did not suggest it to rezone to commercial at this point.
Gotcha. That clarifies it. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a question regarding the current facility. If you're saying that the new zoning would accommodate up to 100 students, does the current building accommodate that number?
So this daycare center has been used before up to 35 students. That's the record staff could find. But since this is a rezoning without plan, we didn't really review that portion because literally the applicant did not submit a plan to accommodate everything. I would believe when they're changing the occupancy, there will be a review on it and make sure everything would accommodate. But I will leave that question to the applicant.
So if they have to expand the current building, how does that affect what we're doing now?
It won't affect the rezoning. It depends on how large they're expanding the building. Since the use will be allowed in R80, what will trigger is typically a building permit review.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Other questions?
Well, at this time, let's go ahead and bring in the applicant and introduce the applicant for this project.
Angela, I believe you've been promoted to panelist. Can you unmute and speak?
Thank you. I just wanted to address the question about whether or not the current facility can accommodate 100 children. To date, there has never been that. I think the maximum number of children is 35. However, the building physically is big enough and has appropriate square footage to accommodate up to 100 children.
Name and address for the record, please.
I'm sorry, my computer. Oh, my name? Is that what you're asking?
Just for the record.
Angela. I'm sorry, I keep getting this message on my, Angela Habibullah, attorney for the applicant. And my address 2405 Grand Suite 800, Kansas City, Missouri 64108.
Make regarding this case?
I'm sorry, I am just having difficulty. I didn't hear that. Could you repeat it, please?
Any other comments you'd like to state for this case?
No, not at this time.
Okay. Or any other questions from the commission to the applicant?
I had a question regarding accommodation for the 100 students. Is that based around a stipulation through state childcare standards, or how does that, in terms of defining sufficiency of space per child, how does that?
You are correct. When I say the building can accommodate up to 100 children or students, that is per the recommendations of the state of Missouri, the square footage that is required for each child. We've already been in contact with the state of Missouri, and so that's what that is referencing.
Okay.
Okay, from the commission?
No.
Up for public testimony? Is there anybody that's raised their hand?
No one has raised their hand.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and close public testimony. Make on this case, so we'll go ahead and close it down for the commission. If there's any comments we'd like to make, or go ahead and make a motion.
Motion to approve case number 3 without conditions.
Second.
For approval of docket item number 3. Lisa, do you mind taking roll call, please?
Commissioner Allender,
Aye.
Baker,
Aye.
Beasley,
Aye.
Crowell, Enders,
Aye.
Rojas,
Aye.
and Sadowski.
Okay, it looks like the case has been passed 8-0, so good luck with your project.
Thank you.
Thank you. The
Next item is
number 12.
Docket item 10. (2020-00033). Request to approve a special use permit for a large scale (930) Carondelet Drive. Patty Knowles, the staff planner.
Good morning, Patty Knowles, City Planning and Development Department staff. I will share my screen with you. This case is a request by Concord Career College to utilize roughly 51,000 square foot of space within an existing medical office building that is located on the St. Joseph Medical Center campus. The applicant held a meeting by Zoom with Center Planning and Development. There were several residents in attendance. Carol Winterode, President of Center Planning and Development, stated in an email to me that they had a successful meeting, and the consensus was that this is a good use of the existing space within the building. So public engagement has been complied with. The Zoning and Development Code, section 88365, states that if space exceeds 50,000 square feet, it is therefore determined to be a large scale public use and therefore requires special use permit approval, review by City Planning Commission, then recommendation to the Board of Zoning Adjustment. There is a controlling case on this site. The most recent amended plan occurred in 1992, at which time there were several proposed additions to the hospital, as well as parking, relocation of Carondelet Drive and existing facilities. The building, as I stated, is located on the St. Joseph Medical Center campus, although it is owned by a real estate investment trust and not St. Joseph Medical Center. The building to be occupied by Concord Career College exists, and no exterior changes or construction are proposed. Let me zoom to the next slide here. As you can see, it is located 930 Carondelet Drive, located roughly east of State Line Road, south of 435. This is the existing campus. The building to be occupied is roughly in this location. As you can see, it is fairly isolated within the St. Joseph Medical Center campus. Surrounding land uses include medical office space, as well as office space to the east. There is really no residential use located nearby. There has been no site plan required by staff because, as I stated, there are no exterior changes. College will perform some tenant finish work to allow the college to occupy the space. There are no applicable standards, Boulevard and Parkway, parkland dedication, none of those are affected. So there is no review required of those. In reviewing the request for special use permit, staff finds that the request does comply with all standards of the zoning and development code. The proposed plan in providing space for educational purposes is in the interest of the public convenience, will not have a significant adverse impact on general welfare of the neighborhood or community. It is consistent with the surrounding land use and area. As I said, the predominant use of the area is institutional use, hospital associated educational functions, as well as some office space. So that is compatible. And staff does not expect the operational characteristics of the site will change by occupancy of this building for college classroom space as opposed to medical office. And therefore there is no adverse impact expected. City Planning and Development Department staff recommends approval of the request for special use permit without conditions. And this concludes my presentation.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the staff on this docket item 10? Welcome the applicant.
Morning, my name is Bob Johnson, 900 West 48th Place, Kansas City, Missouri, appearing on behalf of the applicant. We don't have any comments. We think it's a pretty straightforward application. As staff said, we're not making any exterior additions or improvements to the building. It's merely preparing the tenant space for use by the career college, which we think is an excellent fit at a medical center training healthcare professionals. I have members of Concord Career College here if any questions apply, but otherwise we would stand for questions and support the staff report and in its entirety and ask for your approval. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the applicant?
I have a question. So I'm just trying to understand a little bit more about the use. So Concord Career College, that's a for-profit college. Are you accredited?
I believe so. I want to welcome members of Concord Career College to answer that question. I'm not sure if they've raised their hand on Zoom.
Is Jack Brosman or Julie Fisher
They are, yes, those are individuals with Concord. Jack or Julie, would you be able to answer the question?
I've just promoted them, so give
Thank
them a few moments and they'll be able to speak.
Can you hear me now? Sorry.
There you go. I can hear you, Julie.
This is Julie Fisher. I'm the CFO of Concord. Yes, we are accredited not only nationally by the ACCSC, but we are also accredited on our individual programs by their individual guilds. So we have nursing, dental hygiene, dental assisting, medical assisting, those kinds of programs. So yes, we are accredited. We've been in Kansas City for over 50 years, and we only do medical professional. That's why we really think it's a good fit with us and not being right there next to the hospital. So.
Ken? And open it up for public testimony. Testimony. Assume there's no other discussions other than looking for a motion on this project.
case number 10 without conditions.
Second.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second. Lisa, do you mind taking roll call, please?
Commissioner Allender,
Aye.
Baker,
Aye.
Beasley,
Aye.
Crowell,
Aye.
Enders,
Aye.
Hill,
Aye.
Rojas,
Aye.
and Sadowski.
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0. Thank you for coming in and good luck with your project.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
Right.
Next item is docket 12, which is case number 1752V. That's an old case number that predates when we switched over to Compass KC for the newer commissioners. Sometimes vacations are initiated 2 to 3 years in advance, like this one was. So this is a request to vacate a portion of East 23rd Street in District R0.5 and District DC 15, located just north of Children's Mercy Hospital, to allow for the hospital to eliminate the need for certain encroachment permits and the associated ongoing fees for existing pedestrian bridges and future building permits. Zach Nelson is the staff pointer.
Good morning again. Zach Nelson, City Planning staff. Joe, if you could allow me to share my screen.
I haven't changed any. You should still be able to.
It's saying that it's disabled.
Changed your.
There we go. All right, so this next case, as Joe mentioned, is within the Hospital Hill area. A little more specifically, it's a portion of East 23rd Street in between Locust Street to the west and Holmes Street to the east. The Children's Mercy campus is just to the south. And then they also own the buildings to the north as well. So the only other adjacent property owner is this small piece that's owned by the Parks Department. And the applicant has obtained consent from both property owners. So this is looking east along 23rd Street. This is taken several years ago. And then this is a more recent photo. So you can, it kind of gives some perspective of some of the recent work that's taken place. The hospital has expanded and this sky bridge is now complete actually. So it kind of is the main reason for this vacation today. The applicant has stated that the intent of this vacation is not to close or abandon the street, but to allow the hospital to maximize the use of the adjacent property, allow for continuous connection on campus, and still maintain the street for public use. And then the vacation will eliminate the need for certain encroachment permits and the associated ongoing fees for the pedestrian bridge, and then for also for future building and footprints as well. So the vacation would ultimately allow the applicant to develop or utilize the adjacent property without additional fees or permits. And so the street will really exist and be maintained as it currently is, and it'll still be open for travel. So staff is supportive of this vacation, recommends approval subject to the 6 conditions in the staff report. I can answer any questions you might have.
So from the commission to staff.
Yeah, I wondered if you could speak to how common this is, either in Hospital Hill or other areas.
Vacations generally are pretty common. I would say staff receives an application probably once every 2 weeks approximately, but it can generally take a good amount of time to get consent from property owners, and then also comments from utility companies. So ultimately, all of the vacation requests that we get, I would say maybe 1 or 2 per month make it to CPC approximately. But in terms of Hospital Hill, this is the first one that I'm aware of.
And with those other vacations, are they also setting the same conditions that it would still stay as a public way, but it would allow them more flexibility with building? I think that's where I'm confused a little bit on that precedent.
Yeah, so I would say most right-of-ways do not have access easement retained. However, this is kind of a unique situation. The primary user is the hospital, and
Commissioner Sadowski, it really comes down to whether the right of way is improved or not, and whether there are abutting properties that use it for access. So each one's a little different because we do have a lot of what we call paper streets in the city that were never built, but yet are right of way. And so in those cases, especially where you don't have abutting property owners or the abutting property owners are the same owner, then we typically do not retain an easement.
So this forest thing, I have a question then. If we are vacating this and they're retaining ownership, then the maintenance of this will fall on the hospital?
That's right.
yes, that's correct.
To essentially decrease permitting fees with this vacation.
Yeah, that's
It sounds like
so
that's the main one of the main goals. Yeah.
yeah. And Jackie Foy, she's the applicant for this project, and it looks like she's raising her hand, so she might be able to speak to that a little bit more.
The applicant then? So applicant, if you can state your name and address for the record.
Hi everyone, my name is Jacqueline Foy. I'm with BSA Life Structures and our address is 6601 College Boulevard, Suite 100 in Overland Park, Kansas, 66206. And yes, I just wanted to provide a little bit more background for you guys. The adjacent property owner is the Parks Department. And one other big advantage of keeping the street or privatizing the street and keeping it as a street is it will give us the ability to add some angled parking onto that street and be able to provide additional parking to access not only the hospital, but also the park. So making it private will allow us to signage that parking in such a way that we can provide actual parking stalls for Hospital Hill Park and also the hospital. It also does help eliminate the encroachment fee that Zach referred to for that pedestrian bridge over 23rd Street. We have met with both traffic as well as the fire department and John Hastings to make sure that the street still provides adequate access for the fire department to provide service to the hospital if needed along 23rd Street. And we did meet with traffic to confirm that when we revise the legal description, that there will be a legal description for that street to remain accessible to the public per request from both the traffic and the fire department. So the hospital has agreed to both of those conditions and has discussed that with the Parks Parks Department as well.
This is a permanent decision, correct?
Yes.
I think where I'm struggling is I'm trying to understand from a process standpoint why the city wouldn't just add angled parking there, waive the encroachment fee if that's an issue, and still keep it under public control. I realize that it may look the same from the outside, but I just feel like the permanence of vacating a street it's something worth discussing.
Well,
I don't know that it's possible to waive the encroachment fee. If we were to do that for Children's Mercy on this street, then we would have to really do that for anyone. And there's part of the reason for the fee is the liability aspect of it. Whenever someone's putting a bridge, for example, over the right of way, we take on some liability as the city.
Gotcha.
So that's the purpose, part of the purpose for it. As for the angled parking, I don't know if Jeff Bryan can talk to, I don't know if he's at a different part of Public Works, but there's a process that has to occur to make that happen. And I'm not sure if Jackie has explored that or the hospital has, or if Jeff Bryan knows what that process is.
This is
Yeah,
Jackie
this is
again.
Brandon, Public Works, and no, I know you can apply to have angled parking, but yeah, I'm not sure what discussions have taken place regarding this case specifically. I'm not sure if Jackie can expand on it.
We have had some discussions with Wei Sun about the angled parking. He is open to that. The trick to that is being able to allocate parking for the Parks Department. And so that was one of the reasons as the adjacent property owner that they were on board with that, so that they could provide parking to Hospital Hill. Otherwise, as a public street, it would just be metered parking on a first come, first served basis. So this provides a benefit to them as well in terms of providing a kind of dedicated parking, so to speak, for the park. But the angled parking is a possibility based on our discussions with Wei Sun. It's more about being able to allocate parking spots along that angled parking.
This is Joe. Is the hospital obligated to do that? Was that part of the agreement with the parks development itself, or?
Yeah, that was actually in discussion with the Parks Department and Robert at the Parks Department. And the hospital is going to maintain the street. So in terms of snow removal and mowing, and they already maintain Hospital Hill Park in an agreement with the Parks Department. So as part of the agreement to propose making that street privatized, is that part of that parking would be then allocated to the Hospital Hill Park and it's signed accordingly.
So I'd like to confirm though that the angled parking is not metered. It's just going to be angled parking.
Correct. If the street is privatized, then it would not have to be metered parking. We could do angled parking. They could choose to add, I don't think that they
Time
probably would
limits
add
or something to it.
Yeah, and I think that's the goal, is that right now, most of the parking, there would be like a drop-off spot. So 15-minute parking. And then right now, from what I understand, is the idea was to do 2-hour parking and then have some of those slots specifically designated with signage that says Hospital Hill parking only.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Do we need that as a condition? I'm not seeing anything regarding the angled parking in the staff report.
I think it might just be in the piece where the Parks Department signed off. So it's kind of in some of the paperwork that you fill out to get consent from the property owners. I believe Robert had made a comment about shared parking at the angled parking it would be on the south side of the street. If it's not in there, we can definitely add that as a condition, because I know that that's something that they've already agreed to.
With this seems to would be an unusual condition. I just want to make sure you're aware of what it would.
And I'm sorry. Did you say an unusable condition?
Joe, I think you cut out a little bit. Can you repeat yourself?
Zach, are you there? Can you
Yeah, I'm here. I'm sorry, you're cutting out, Joe. I can't hear you.
Can you speak to the possibility of adding that as a condition?
Yeah, I believe we could add something like that. I've never had a condition kind of like that before that specifies how part of the right of way is used after it's vacated. So, Sarah, do you see any issues with that? Because if not, we can add something.
I don't know if maybe Sarah caught it all, but it was hard for me to capture what the essence of the condition would even be.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know. I mean, I think this whole request, frankly, is unusual. I don't know that I've ever seen a vacation request so that somebody doesn't have to pay a fee. I think this whole application is unusual, but I don't know that I caught the condition completely that you were referencing.
I think the condition that Ashley was referring to, Commissioner, I'm sorry, I don't want to butcher your last name, but was just making sure
Time
that
hearing you. Can you speak louder or
Yes.
closer to your microphone?
Yes. Can you guys hear me better?
That's a little better.
Okay. I think what she's referring to is just making sure that it's understood or somehow formally documented that the parking would be shared by both the hospital and the Parks Department. I know that's been agreed to by the parties, but if that needs to be formally documented as a condition. And then also to address the comment in terms of the vacation. When we first started this process, the hospital, in bigger picture wise, is in the process and was putting on hold the rezoning of part of Hospital Hill from a residential district to a downtown core district. And part of that stipulation was to move forward with the research building first, get that development plan in place. Then following that, move forward with the street vacation, and then that would all be incorporated in the rezoning of their area so that they could be downtown core rather than residential, and kind of creating that district, because currently for every project they are required to provide submit for a special use permit. And I believe Truman is kind of on the same path to rezone to downtown core as well. And so the idea is to create some of the streets, specifically the south half of Kenwood was already vacated, and the west half of 24th Street was already vacated, to help create this district and to help move some of that liability and some of the maintenance to the hospital and away from the city, but still provide access throughout Hospital Hill. So I will agree, it's kind of odd by itself, but it is part of a bigger process that's ongoing and is slated to pick back up with the completion of the research building.
Yeah, and I would just agree with how Ms. Floyd detailed that. I think what I was hearing from her is that the city's giving up the street, but the Parks Department still wants to have parking along that street for their adjacent park. And we just want to make sure that the hospital is allowing for that.
Yeah, and I think that should be some sort of agreement just between the applicant and parks. And I don't believe that condition should be added.
That's fine. I just wanted to highlight it in case there was a need to enforce that at some point through our body, but it could be through them.
I'm sorry. I think what we're dealing with here is it sounds like there's a Hospital Hill Park north of the 23rd Street, which, by the way, this street only serves the hospital. It's a public street that we maintain, that they have to repeatedly get encroachment permits on, but it only serves their properties. It doesn't serve any other property owner. There's a history between that park when it was created, because I believe, Jackie, is it the hospital that owns that parkland and not the Parks Department?
They actually have a 100-year lease on that property, and they are responsible for maintaining, and the hospital actually designed, paid for, and built the Hospital Hill Park as part of their ongoing agreement with the Parks Department. So they don't technically own it, but they do have a 100-year lease on that property.
So I think what Children's Mercy is doing here is in part responding to contractual obligations that were set forth when that park was developed, or the agreements were entered into. You know, this, because the street only serves the hospital's properties and the Parks Department, of course, on the north side. I think that's why staff is okay with this. There are a number of criteria in the code that have to be met, and Zach evaluated this request against those criteria, and we can't recommend approval unless it meets them. So that's why we're comfortable proceeding. I think if you want to add a condition that ensures that some of the parking is reserved for the Parks Department, I would just suggest that if we do that, we say it's consistent with whatever that contractual agreement is, so that we don't have a potential conflict between our condition and what's in the previously executed agreement.
Yeah, I mean, I think now that I'm understanding it, as long as there's this contractual agreement that's already in play with the Parks Department, I don't think we necessarily need to speak to it at the risk of being redundant or conflicting. So I would say let's go ahead and move forward without a condition.
Questions for the applicant? Up for any public testimony? Anybody that'd like to speak on docket item number 12? The applicant, I don't believe they had any more comments, so let's go for a motion.
I have a couple of comments. I think generally I'm going to be voting no on this. I think the last couple vacations have challenged my kind of ideological perspective on giving up public property to private entities, but they've often been alleyways or things that have essentially been vacated just naturally. I think this is a different case in that it's actually disconnecting the grid from Holmes to Locust and then on the Gillum. And I think it's a permanent vacation. I think we have I think council should be more creative in coming up with ways to accommodate different conditions rather than just giving up public right away. So I'll be voting no on this.
I find this problematic as well. I'm gonna be supportive of it, but I find it problematic just because to me it feels as though we're selling the property, in that I imagine the process of the city upgrading and adding parking would be a longer, more expensive process that might not happen for some time, and therefore we're picking a entity that we trust to do this well, and I'm sure it'll be maintained incredibly well. And so that's why I'm going to be supportive of it. I think ultimately we're going to end up with a better, improved road that is going to be able to be used by the public with better parking. But I do find it problematic in that it does set some sort of precedent that if we are in favor of the applicant, then if that applicant has the money and the wherewithal to improve roads, we might all of a sudden find ourselves in a situation where we feel compelled to let them do that and to continue to take over public property.
Yeah, I would agree, and I think there's a need for us to look internally about how we can avoid vacation of public land in lieu of these challenges that they're facing. So I think in this case, it's a respected entity. They are the only ones serving this road. I see there being an exception, but I do have concerns, especially when there's tremendous pressure on infrastructural costs that we continue to privatize as a solution. So I think we just need to re-examine whether there might be a better way, whether it's waiving those encroachment fees in certain cases or whatever that might look like, making it easier, but not necessarily relinquishing control. So.
So this is Forresting.
Okay.
And just to clarify with myself of what I'm understanding the applicant saying, the throughway, the alleyway, the street will still be able to be used by the public. There we are just taking ownership to maintain it and to provide additional parking. Is that not what I've heard?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah, the street would stay open and that would be part of the legal description. Yes.
Okay.
Yep, it would remain open to
That's,
all
I just
public
want
and all traffic.
That's what I wanted to confirm. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Move to approve docket item number 12 with conditions as stated.
Second.
Lisa, do you mind taking roll call, please?
Commissioner Allender,
Aye.
Baker, Baker, I can't hear you. Baker?
He has voted no.
Okay, nay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's an audio issue in the chamber. It has to be.
Okay. Beasley,
Aye.
Crow,
Aye.
Enders,
Aye.
Hill,
Aye.
Rojas,
Aye.
and Sadowski.
Aye.
Okay, looks like the motion passes 7-1. Thank you for coming in and good luck with your project.
Thank you for your time and thank you for your guys' thoughtful discussion. I appreciate that for future reference.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Last case is docket 13, case number ROW 2020-00007, a request to vacate the north-south alley located between Lister Avenue to the west and Chelsea Avenue to the east, building to the south, and Linwood Boulevard to the north, to allow for development of short-term housing for families of patients being treated at the medical center.
Am I up? I didn't know if Shreya was going to do the presentation or I am.
Is it Ms. Tucker speaking?
Yes, it is.
Okay, yeah, I will go through the presentation briefly and then you'll have a chance to speak here in a second.
Thank you.
So this case in front of you is another street vacation. More specifically, it's an alley vacation. And here's the general location of it. More specifically, it is located in the Linwood Green Park that's abutting the Veterans Hospital to the south, and then the Linwood Park to the north and the east. More specifically, it is located, it's bounded by the Linwood Boulevard to the north, and Linwood Boulevard is an established boulevard according to our major street plan. And it's also bounded by the Lister Avenue to its west and the Chelsea Avenue to the east. The zoning around it, including R2.5 and R1.5 and R0.5. So there is a mix of multifamily and the single family use around it. The subject side is what you see here right in front of you. Here's the view looking east from Lister Avenue, looking at the subject site. And this is a view looking south from Linwood Boulevard. This vacation is a little bit different than the vacation you just heard. There is no established streets or alley on the property. However, there is a platted alley, which is running north-south, as you can see, that's going through the subject site where the applicant proposes to build a Fisher House for short-term living for patients and families that they serve in the Veterans Hospital directly south. There is a sanitary sewer line easement running east to west to the very north of this alleyway. And here's another picture showing, indicating the vacation of the alley a little bit better. This neon blue line here in front of you is the alleyway that the applicant proposed to vacate. Again, there is never an established alleyway here, and this property is owned by the Veterans Administration. So staff recommend approval without conditions for this vacation. And for, I believe the applicant has more details about the project of the Fisher House for the short-term living. That concludes my presentation, and I'm open to questions.
And to staff on this case.
I have a question. The slide that you have up now, the property to the north of the turquoise or blue line, is that owned by the Veterans Administration or is that parkland?
I believe that is part of the parkland still.
Okay, because I was going to ask why not just vacate it all?
Let me double check.
It is parkland. It is parkland to the north and to the east. Both of those plots are city parks. We only purchased this 2.6 acres of what's called Linwood Green.
Okay, thank you.
If it helps any, I do not believe that alley actually even goes across Linwood Boulevard. I believe it's not necessarily vacated, but it does not look like it's used across the street.
And the applicant does have a presentation whenever you guys are ready.
Questions for staff? Let's go ahead and welcome the applicant. Applicant, welcome.
Ms. Tucker, I've pulled out your presentation and you can start anytime.
If you don't mind stating your name and address for the record, please.
Certainly. My name is Mary Alice Tucker. I'm an architect with the Kansas City VA, and our address is 4801 East Linwood Boulevard, Kansas City, Missouri, 64128.
Thank you.
So the purpose of this was basically we purchased this land in order to provide land for a Fisher House. This is what we're proposing. This is a prototype of what we're proposing to build. It's a short-term housing for families of veterans that are having their care given here on our main campus. We are very fortunate to have been given one of these Fisher houses. It's similar to a Ronald McDonald House, if that helps you understand what the purpose is. As Shay said, this is Linwood Boulevard, the Fisher House site. This is our main hospital over here. This is Veterans Parkway here. This area is owned by the city. This is owned by the city, and the rest of this is all VA property. This is the plat of the description as required. Again, the north-south alley that we'd like to vacate. This is an easement that we've already gotten all the comments from city utilities in order to vacate that, or not vacate that, sorry, to give us appropriate commentary on the easement that will remain. This is a rough sketch basically of the Fisher House location. So the city park, parking lot, Fisher House, and then a back patio area. these are basically all the petitions, forms that were required by the city. I put them all into the presentation. So paperwork. And all the commentary. And then at the end, basically we've got our letter of purpose. And then this is a draft ordinance that Sarah Baxter, the assistant city attorney, was able to prepare for us to help us move forward with the vacation. Speaking of vacation, nobody gets to get one of these days. Does anybody have any questions? I appreciate the opportunity to present all this to you.
Sure. Any questions for the applicant? Let's go ahead and open it up for public testimony. Is there anybody here to speak on behalf of docket item number 13?
Mr. Chairman, this is Travis Kiefer with Casey
State your name
Water.
and address for the record, please.
Travis Kiefer with Casey Water, 414 East 12th Street, 5th floor, City Hall. Just one point of clarification, there was a east-west storm sewer, combined sewer that runs through the site. And I guess I didn't see in the language that the easement was being retained in that area.
That is correct. And I have passed on that information. Also, the information on the size of the stormwater connection, I have passed that on to the architects and engineers and the contractor as well. So we will coordinate that.
Typically in a vacation.
Stay in place as well as the north-south one.
Stating that easements are retained, so.
We can add a condition to the staff report stating the easement for the sanitary line, the sanitary will be remained. Does that satisfy your need, Travis?
Yes, thank you.
Some public testimony here in the council chambers. So if you don't mind saying your address and name for the record, please.
My address is 3226 Lister. My name is Shelley Baker.
Okay, welcome. Mind's coming up to the microphone
We've
thing?
been there for like 20
Her
years.
house is on the east side of the house project, and she want to know what's going to happen with her house. Right across the street from the VA hospital.
3 houses on the block.
It's 3 houses on the block.
3 or 4 houses.
Yeah.
We can answer that question. Shu, can you confirm this doesn't affect Lister Avenue right of way or 33rd Street?
Oh,
Is that correct?
That's correct. As you can see on this area photo, the vacation runs on this parkland currently, and they're not going to affect any streets.
So you can't see it on the map, nor can you see it when you look across the street, but there's actually right of way in that field. Yeah, there's right of way in that field that the city owns that's preventing the hospital's ability to build the Fisher House. And so that's why they're asking for because they can't build on top of city right of way. So that's why they're asking for that vacation.
Okay. All our people was just 3 of us on that block, and we were all here.
Yeah.
So I was just trying to say.
You'll still have a street, you'll still have access. It won't affect that, though eventually there will be something built across the street, is what the hospital said.
That's okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you for coming in. Their hand for public testimony. Public testimony at this time. And with that, any other comments, applicant, about this?
No, sir.
Close all testimony and we can make, or we'll go straight ahead to a motion.
I just wanted to say that I think it's a great use and it's also a great transition from the residential use to the very large institution of the VA hospital. So I'd like to put forth a motion for docket item 13 to be approved without conditions.
Ms. Sadowski, staff would like to add one condition to motion that to revise it. Yeah, we would like to add a condition to ask the applicant to remain the sanitary easement.
Okay, so I'd like to motion that docket item number 13 remain with the condition of keeping the sanitary easement to be approved.
Second.
Lisa, do you mind taking roll call, please?
Commissioner Allender,
Aye.
Baker,
Aye.
Beasley,
Aye.
Prowl,
Aye.
Enders,
Aye.
Hill,
Aye.
Rojas,
Aye.
and Sadowski.
Aye.
Okay, looks like the motion passes 8-0 to vacate this alleyway. And we certainly appreciate you coming in and good luck with your project.
Thank you very much.
Done with our docket items? Does that seem right?
That seems right.
And I'd like to point out to everybody, this is a record time on our meeting. Congratulations. Thank you very much for all your hard work. And so I think we don't have anything planned until the next commission meeting, which will be on October 6th. And at that time, we will be all back into virtual meetings at that time. So if there's nothing else that anybody'd like to speak about, if we want to adjourn the meeting.
I have a quick question.
Go ahead.
On your survey on those that would be participating in the election, have we made a decision on the hearing for that date yet?
Yeah, I believe a lot of people are going to be working the election and we have canceled the November 3rd meeting. And we're not going to do a makeup meeting. We'll just make up the cases at the following meeting on the 17th? Is that right? Yeah. So you'll have that day off.
I have one other question or comment. We had talked last time about what we thought the right way to evaluate group living cases would be. Do you have any idea of what the best process will be for understanding that set of criteria, or how we establish it, or who establishes it?
My impression was that you all would like us to come back and explain to you what the code says about group living, kind of an introduction to it, so that you could then assess.
That'd be a great place to start.
Yeah.
Is there any training that we could cover that before the next planning commission coming up on that?
Yeah, we've got those 4, 5, 6 cases that are coming up all on group living at our October 6th meeting. So is it something possible we could between now and then? Sure. I imagine that would be a full virtual call that we could post and do virtually at some point.
Yeah, we could. Yeah, it just depends on what time would work for all the commissioners.
And maybe
I would say we could even receive some written document that we could review before it if we can't manage to do an actual meeting.
Can we provide something in writing between meetings if we?
Right, I think that's still a public
Right.
record. It's coming from you, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's okay if the discussion is sort of informal. I don't know if we necessarily need, a full PowerPoint or something like that, but just giving space to talk about it before we get into the cases.
I mean, I can put something in like a memo and we can document that on the next docket and just attach it, but I can provide it in advance of the docket, I would imagine.
That
Can I
would
do
be
that?
helpful. I think that I felt and then also sensed that we felt there was a need for group living homes that were somewhat along the lines of what the applicant had brought forward, but that we did not feel that that applicant had satisfied everything. And so I think for starters, it would be great to have a better understanding of what currently is required from group living.
That maybe as part of the docket item number 6, that there's some additional documentation about
Would just be to provide you a memo and have a discussion item at the front of the docket so that before you get in, and if you have questions, we can answer them then. But if you don't, that's okay too.
We could do that before we got into the cases, right?
Yeah, that's why we'd put it at the front of the docket so it's separate from the cases.
of the next meeting, just docket that item. So there'll be some written documentation that's provided as part of the packet that we get, but also the opportunity to speak about it prior to going into our cases. It's like you don't like that whatsoever?
Well, I just think it's unusual to talk about it generally before you talk about the case. I mean, can you include, are you just looking for a more fleshed out staff report that goes into more detail maybe? Would that get it?
Sounds like I think she's looking more for what it is and what is the criteria that makes up a group home. Is that right?
Yeah, unfortunately, my knowledge of what is sanctioned as acceptable is pretty poor. And we think that, or I felt as though there should be a situation in which it's admissible. And I don't understand what the criteria is necessarily. And I don't know, I can't think of very many good examples, especially private ones such as this. There are some like institutional examples that are easier to fall back on, but I had a very hard time evaluating the case based upon my knowledge. And so I don't feel especially comfortable addressing 5 cases, which could set some sort of precedent based upon how we rule. And I don't want to kick the can again if we don't have to.
And maybe to add to that, I think my thought is that it would give us some time, like I'd like to do a little bit of research and understand what is happening in other cities and how people are managing that. Not to overcommit myself to that, but I'd like to just kind of have a little more of a bearing of how this is working for other places, just so that we can have a conversation in general if there needs to be more policy around it, not necessarily specific to those cases. Because those cases have to be held to whatever policy is in place right now. But it seems like what we heard from the last time is that there's some gaps in policy, potentially, but we'd have to go through that to understand that.
And I don't know whether it's in the preview of the planning committee, but I'd like to know whether there's any operational procedures that these houses have to comply to from a city code.
I mean, I can answer most of these questions right now.
Okay.
I mean, the answer to that is no.
Oh.
No.
Thinking about is getting a better understanding of what's existing today, and then I'm gathering, unfortunately, we have to kind of decide next time, but it seems like there's room for improvement to better clarify those requirements outside of an institutional group living setting.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of confusion between group living that the term our code uses for group living and what people think of as group living. And there's other uses that are groups of people who live together but are different terms in our code. So
Mhm.
there's group living, and then there's halfway house. That's a completely different type. And then there's, domestic violence shelter, and there's several different types of residential living that really are a congregation of people who are not one household.
Yeah.
Besides group living.
So like,
it is a little confusing.
so would you consider, so we approved the one on Paseo, which deals with substance abuse. Would that be considered a halfway house group living type, or is it all just kind of grouped into group living?
No, there are group living uses that are specific, and then there's non-specific. So unless you meet one of the specific definitions, then you're non-specific, which is what you saw last time. The case that was continued was an unspecified group living because they didn't meet one of the defined types of specific group uses. And it's my understanding that's what you guys want clarification on, is what are all these different uses and what's their definitions and how are they different from one another?
Yes, and for example, the last case that we just saw with the location of that home, none of us, it wasn't on our radar to ask how that was operated or what happened, and that's not what we were evaluating. But because of the way that the city has approached short-term rentals like Airbnb, I feel as though there will be people paying attention to the next couple cases on this topic, and there are other people who might be chomping at the bit or ready to decide if it's something that they too want to do in creating short-term living situations. And so I'd like to be careful about, just because of the number of cases and the number of homes and the public interest that we already saw in that one case, I'd like to do it in a way that we feel comfortable this first or next go around.
And I'd like to add emphasis on trying to clarify the short-term rental as opposed to group housing, because that was part of the issue with that case, was the amount of time someone might rent or lease a space.
I mean, that's how it's different.
The operational, maybe it's not under our preview, but the operational is, in my perspective, very important because it comes back to, is it good for the community as we evaluation?
Yeah, I think like the term non-specific group living, I have a tendency to want to call it like non-institutionalized group living, because it doesn't have a framework of conflict resolution and application process and all these things that come with those other uses. This is sort of much more informal. And so the question is do we leave that up to the landlords to figure out that agreement, like the last case? Or is there a need to have more of a template or even sort of a mandatory requirement that everybody that lives in those situations has to follow this kind of structure to how that looks in terms of managing the resources in that space? Only because it seems that what's happening is that because that's left very loose and casual, it's caused conflict that has rippled into the neighborhood and caused issues with crime or nuisance or what have you. So I think we have to determine how much that is in an effect. Is one thing, is it really causing the ripple effect that the last case alluded to? And if so, do we need to have some kind of like conflict resolution structure in place for these places that don't have a bigger institutionalized framework to kind of prevent those things from happening?
What the parking ratio is for group living and how that's determined. So just little things like that. If it's already there, I think I just need to be directed to it.
If you're talking in the chamber, we can't hear you.
I said we got a motion to adjourn the meeting, and so we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.